Don't smile, Alice.
I don't have to often see anything when I'm taking pictures. It's just a kind of an intuitive response to what's in front of me, I think. And I think that's how magical photography is, because actually you don't know until you get the frames back. Then you see what your unconscious self has been up to. And increasingly, if I'm not working in my head and I'm not working conceptually and I'm working in my body and in my intuitive self, then the world just shows me what I need to see. Shows me what the stories that need to be seen. I think there was a kind of seamless transition from the psychotherapy to the photography. I just wanted to be creative, and I chose photography as my medium. I had, I've got 4 kids. I was seeing clients. Alice was small with health difficulties, and actually all that together, I decided to kind of ditch the psychotherapy to commit to being a photographer, because I couldn't do it all. I didn't want to dilute my photography practice.
1, 2, 3. Okay, if you can look straight at me now, in the middle. 1, 2, 3. Let's try once more. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Great. It's not very clever, is it?
Even if they're not conscious, they're unconsciously aware that I'm there with the camera and they're being observed and witnessed. My work, and all photographers' work, is learn how to be as invisible as possible, so they don't change the chemistry of the space that they're in. And I think my psychotherapy really helped there. And actually, but once you built up confidence with the people around you, like actually I'm not there to, that you've got their trust, then I think increasingly you just disappear from the space. I'm less intrusive. So when I talk about building relationships, that's what I mean about building relationships. It's like kind of small incremental steps until you begin to just not, till you inhabit the space in a very different way. I think the river interests me because I think as a small child I never wanted to live by the sea, and I lived by the sea in Brighton, and I always wanted to live near a river and near the woods, and here I am. It was a real longing to do that. And there's something so exquisite about the river, and in the way that it just feels safer for me than the sea. And the river is so serene, I think, and a kind of space to hang out and party and have the first relationships in, and
Are we getting up? It's going to be really wet.
I just remembered that I wanted to talk about and communicate through photography how I felt about my experience, and also, the political and social narratives of difference and disability, and my story as a mother and a photographer. And I increasingly became quite fearful. It's like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Anyway, so when I did, I decided to stop thinking and just take pictures of Alice.
Auntie Sarah. Auntie Sarah. Thank you, Auntie Sarah.
I think it was there was this kind of unconscious collaboration between us, because there are very strong themes that are presented in that piece of work. I wanted to talk about, the traumatization of these children and how they've been kind of brutalized by the system, There was a bigger story that needed to be communicated about these children, and I have no doubt that Alice was part of that, and for many reasons that I could refer to, that showed me that. And there was my story, obviously, about my own fear of difference and how that felt not to love my child. And so making this work did shine a very huge bright light on me and my own kind of narcissism and my need for perfection. So the before the ball I took when Martha and all her friends, they were 16, it was the end of year ball. And so I took a picture of Alice just as she was walked into this scene of them all getting ready, and she stood there. And there was a kind of really extraordinary quality of her not being part of it, her just watching and observing the scene. And then the next day, she was walking up the garden path with this kind of pink tutu on, with her head slightly kind of bent down. And I just had the camera. I didn't really observe what was happening, I just took the picture. And so everything that I wanted to communicate from the first picture was actually Alice isn't part of this. So the next picture was called Not Invited. And there was Alice walking up the garden path with this tutu on. And she's not going to the ball. And that for me communicates so much about the screening process. And it always affects me talking about it. Anyway, the screening process, and that we're not having a better conversation about it. And no one wants their child to step into the world where they're absolutely not invited, and she's not. Doesn't matter how much that we build into resources, into these resources, making their lives better, which is what's happening. Ultimately, she's not invited here. Iceland, 100% screening rate. And we're climbing. Happy birthday to you.
Is there rock without the camera ready? Sorry.
Which bit? That bit or that bit?
With the little orange juice.
Bit right in the middle there.
Yeah, the ones at the top. The orange thing.
Whoa.
That's it.
Oh, you done it?
No,
Sorry, mate.
A bit of a back moment.
I need underwater girl. One, two, three.
Well, Martha was actively wanting to be photographed, which is a good thing. So I could just plonk her in any light and she'd be wanting to be photographed. That was good. And then my attention went to Alice, and then she clearly felt a bit overlooked by that. Somehow she may have just felt disconnected. So that was the perfect reason to begin the work. My tutor, David Chandler, who's extraordinary, he said to me, there's something about her, which I hadn't seen at the time. Anyway, and there was something about her. She was like the perfect subject. And she has this kind of chameleon face, so it always looks different. Martha would bring me up and say, we're in a club and come and photograph us. And I'd turn up to club and she'd be really pissed, and she was, herding everyone together for my shot. She was able to really focus in, because it's really challenging to work like that, and she just knew it. I think the last image in the book really demonstrates how she's evolved and how the project evolved and where it went. And she's serene, and she's really in her body. This industry, that the photography industry, is so male-dominated, especially around women's bodies and nudity. And this isn't a man taking the picture, this is a mother, and it's a mother's gaze. And I think politically that's really important. I'm working with this camera over here, this 10.8. For the work with Joseph, I needed to be working in this format. So, because I've got a show in September in Aperture in New York, it's kind of coming into form before it's ready to come into form, because it's a 2-year project, so it's a kind of in-process show. But all the pictures are a bit of a fuck-up, really. But then I kind of got thinking about it. And so all the light leaks and the imperfections and the struggle really tells me about how we are in that moment and how he is, as he's kind of trying to understand the changing boundaries of life and individuating, separating from me, and also my struggle with all that too. There's a kind of innocence and naivety in them that tell me everything I need to know about Joseph. So that's a good thing. Anyway, so that's what I think about imperfection. I don't know. Life isn't perfect. Life isn't high definition. It's far from that. It's volatile, it's kind of highly strung with emotion. So therefore, I think perhaps it's okay to communicate that. So there you go.